Hello guys, and I am at this beautiful construction site for today's video. No, I am not. That is a big lie. Let me show you where I truly am. Okay, let's go. Don't skip the video. Wait for it. Because I am at this beautiful place. I'm here for the Shanghai derby. Shanghai Shenhua against Shanghai Port. Shenhua is definitely the more favourable team in Shanghai. They have more fans, they've been around for a lot longer, whereas Port, it's very new to you, they're younger than me, it's around 20 years old, but they have been bought with success. They've got really rich owners, they've been taken over, and they've bought their way to lots of trophies. So yeah, let's see what some of the fans think. 你是上海人吗？
上海人，对。
啊，所以为什么你支持上海海港而不支持上海申花？
那以前很早就看足球了，但是不是说特别那种死忠啊。
题很复杂很复杂，因为作为老一代的上海来讲，都是支持申花开始的。自从那个根宝带领那个东亚那个起来之后，发现他们踢球的一些风格然后一些那个踢法，然后比较好看然后那时候呢，申花也是在一个低谷所以呢，很多的那批人都转到那个上港去了。
我想问一下，申花和海港分析的关系怎么样？你觉得互相瞧不起？
水火不容，势不两立，死敌，就像曼联、曼城。
你觉得哪些来自上海海港的足球员可以参加英超联赛？
应该现在除了奥斯卡，应该没有别人。
目前没有可以参加。
奥斯卡
不行
Browning
奥斯卡可以 ，Of course 奥斯卡。
Now I've come here a little bit earlier, got about a couple of hours until kick-off, so I want to discuss with you before the match begins the rise and the dramatic fall of football in China. So the Chinese government set out a plan that by 2050 they were going to take over the football world. They were going to be a global superpower. You see, the idea of football actually began in China, an ancient game called Suzhu. It was then later developed by the British into what we now know as modern football. However, China just hasn't caught up with the rest of the world, and China seems to be further away from that 2050 goal than ever before. It really does seem not likely it's going to happen. So it begs the question, what went wrong? So yeah, the president of China himself is a huge football fan. It's just he supports the wrong team. He supports Manchester City. I'm a Manchester United fan. Yeah, he even went to the Etihad Stadium and there was that infamous photo of the president next to the then British Prime Minister David Cameron and Sergio Aguero. He even had a kickabout with the lads himself. So yeah, because he loved football, he really wanted to increase, China's reputation on the football market, and so he demanded that there would be lots of investment from private companies, but also the government, into football in China. And yes, the Chinese Super League went on a massive spending spree. Huge signings were bought. Nicolas Anelka, Carlos Tevez, Didier Drogba, who else? Oscar, who currently plays for Shanghai. And so in those couple of years, that was the boom of Chinese football. There were a lot more football fans. Stadiums were really full. And people were talking about football everywhere when they weren't before. And this was something which had never really been seen before. Chinese investors putting lots of money into football teams, not only in China, but abroad. You have AC Milan and Inter Milan, the two Italian giants. And most of these investors were real estate companies. And this is where the bust began. As the real estate economy began to go down, as the pandemic was coming in around the world, the economy just wasn't quite right. The money was not there. And so a lot of the owners just had no money, and so many teams went bust. I mean, look at Guangzhou and Jiangsu. They dominated the Chinese Super League. They were 9 times champions in the last 10 years before the pandemic. And now they both don't exist. They have no money. It is really sad to see. And so many more teams followed suit. The government realised that this was not working. Too much money was going into football in China. I mean, take for example Didier Drogba, a huge Chelsea icon. He played in Shanghai. He was not delivered the wages which he was promised. He was offered too much, and to this day he has still not been paid his full wages for which he played here. And so the government did two huge changes to football in China. The first one was a wage cap on foreign footballers. They were not paid crazy money now, so they were paid similar wages to what they would in Europe. And so a lot of players just decide to stay in Europe now. But the second, the most crucial one, is that there is a 100% tax rate on foreign footballers when Chinese clubs buy them. So for example, let's say a Chinese club decided to buy a footballer for £40 million. They would then need to pay £40 million to the Chinese government, and it's just a ridiculous amount of money, so it just never happens anymore. So with 1.5 billion Chinese people, you would expect there to be some kind of Messi or Ronaldo wonder kid out there, but alas, there is not. There never has been, and it is a mystery. Unless you look at it on a deeper level, I really believe that a key issue is the education system. You see, in China, it's really competitive because of the sheer amount of people. If you want to succeed in life, you want to buy a property, you want to have a nice car, whatever, then you need to have a good education. You need to go to a top university, and only then can you get a really good job. But to get to the top universities, you need to be maybe in the top 1 or 2% of people in your whole county, your whole or province, I should rather say, right? And that's just really, really difficult to do. And so yeah, because of that, there really isn't that much time to focus on sports. And in addition, there's just nowhere to play football. I mean, there's just not that much green space. If you want to go, you've got to book a court, you have to pay for it. Whereas, if we're comparing to Europe, if we're comparing to the UK, I mean, there's a place everywhere. You can play for free, there's fields, people play on the streets, and when we go back home, when we finished our day at school, we would do our homework, well, me personally anyway, I would do my homework for maybe, 10, 20, 30 minutes tops, and then I'd be playing football all night until the evening, and that would be that. And I'm not a very good footballer, but I'd be playing all of the time. So imagine in China, you just play maybe a couple times a week, for example. It's just going to be very difficult to get to that top level. Also, in the UK, you don't need to have a good education to succeed. You don't need to go to university to have a house or have lots of money, get a car. It's okay. But yeah, it really doesn't matter if you don't do that well at school. You can be very successful without getting good grades, getting any grades at all, for that matter. And so a lot of parents, they put a lot of emphasis on sports. When you finish school, I know a lot of parents, and they really don't care about education. They'll be like, whatever, you decide if you want to do your homework or not. And so people, in the UK, that's why we have a lot of uneducated people, right? They'll focus a lot on different sports activities. There's so much infrastructure, so many opportunities for that. I mean, lots of football clubs, even in little towns where I am. This is Shrewsbury, by the way. This is just a very, very small town, a very small population, but there's so much places to play football. There's an academy to grow and to be a top football player. I mean, in my school alone, I know there's a few people, a handful of people who are professional footballers now. They've become successful. But of course, education, that's not the only reason. It's a very complicated issue. It's just a partial reason for football in China. I'm just comparing it, from my experience, being in the UK and in China, what I feel. But there are so many other reasons. I mean, there are limited football teams in China. I mean, the good ones are in the big cities. And, a lot of football fans in China seem to support European teams rather than the Chinese football. So, whereas in the UK, it's very much like a culture, and there's a lot of support even for smaller local teams, and this brings people together. This makes people more passionate about football, and this makes people want to get more involved. I mean, I remember I hated football at one point, and then I moved to school where all of my friends loved football, and they got me into it, and because of that passion, excitement, that's when I became totally in love with football. So it's going to be one of those things which it will take a long time. But I do think there is a future for football in China. It is slowly progressing. There are more people getting into it. But it's not something that can be paid for or rushed. It definitely needs to begin with the grassroots level football and work its way up. So hopefully one day I will be able to witness China in a World Cup. Let's see. Anyway, yeah guys, we're going to go into the stadium now. The football is going to soon begin, so let's see what football in China is like. I'm hoping Shanghai Port will win. I'm going to go for a 2-0 win, hoping Oscar will score. Let's have a look.
Gracias.